Hello, 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 and good morning. Happy November. I hope that you all celebrated the full moon and Halloween as if all was perfect in the world and there was not a single concern on your mind. That's the way I was feeling. And I really enjoyed last night. Actually, probably one of the best Halloweens we've had in forever. Certainly since our kids were littles and cared about what we wanted to do on Halloween. We wanted to go trick-or-treating and getting them all dressed up, and now they could care two poops less about what we want to do on Halloween. So this year we took it upon ourselves. We built ourselves a flower. We didn't build ourselves a flower. We built ourselves a fire. We actually did it in the fire pit that you've seen if you've been watching these podcasts. What is this morning, Joe? What are we doing here? I'm confused.
Sunday morning in the garden.
Sunday morning in the garden. If you've been following these, then you will know that I've had a beautiful, massive moonflower growing in my fire pit. And we sacrificed her to the moon goddess last night, and she went out. And then I laid down next to the fire and had the opportunity to just go to sleep and just enjoy the fire. I woke up at about 1:30 in the morning. The coals were still hot, but the fire was out, and it was perfect time for us to go inside and snuggle up and get warm. And I hope you guys had a wonderful time as well. Now, that being said, I am super energetic and very excited about gardening because it's the time of year when the planters are heavy on it. We are planting as fast as we possibly can until we get to January, when our outdoor ground planting tends to slow down a little bit. The daylight hours are super short. The weather is cool. Whether it's cold or not, it's cool enough to where the plants are just not growing as fast, and there is always a potential of freezing. And so we're tending to manage that. But right now, we're planting, and I am directly planting with direct sowing, where I literally put the seed in the ground rather than putting it in a start and then transplanting the plant. I am doing that now consistently and have done a lot of that in this garden. But one of the things that I like to do before that is to make sure that I go through and do a really good cleanup and find out where the spaces are going to be available, where some of the excess plants that I grow are just overgrowing, and now it's time for them to go. Now I want to talk to you a little bit about the aesthetics of your garden as we're doing this garden tour today. A perfect example. So yesterday I went through the garden. I went through my older garden, and I'll show that off to you guys in just a minute. But over in that older garden, I went through and I trimmed back everything that wasn't required to be growing, and to cut back any dried seeds. I cut back any dried vines and all of that in order to be able to see what ground is available for me then to direct sow my different seeds in. Now there's conversations about that, and sometimes I look around my garden and I think, gosh, it's not exactly aesthetically pleasing. But then when I dig deeper into it and really look at it, I remember why I leave things the way that I leave them. And sometimes you'll need to do a cleanup for whatever purpose, like you're looking to do a fantastic Instagram photo, or you've got a group of people coming out and you want to get your garden magic, you want to get your magic garden magazine ready. Those types of just visual concepts are very important, certainly for your backyard gardener. However, for the functional side of things, we have to keep in mind why things get left. And as I was working my way around the garden yesterday, I was balancing the decision of whether to cut something back or not to cut something back. And Joe actually asked me a question this morning that I wanted to share with you guys, and I think that it's really important, and it's about this. Okay? So here I've got this, and Joe's comment was, hey, can we go ahead and cut back this sunflower that is clearly dead? And yes, of course it's clearly dead. And yes, it's not the most beautiful thing in the world. However, what I also told him, and notice that our water feeder is right here, or bird waterer is right here.
And empty.
Well, I'll put some water in it, I promise. Yeah, they get a little mad at me, actually, when I don't put any water in there for them. And in addition to that, this is also above the place where the chickens can kind of hide out and hang out. And so one of the reasons why it would be worthy to leave something like this, in particular if you're not trying to get some sort of specific presentable space to show off in a photo or something like that, is because these seeds are now available for the birds to come in and eat. And they do. They come in, they swarm around it, they flit in it, they pick off little insects, they eat the seeds. some of those seeds drop down. My chickens eat them. It's also a protective barrier as well that kind of keeps them safe, the birds, everybody safe. And what that does is it keeps things from eating my plants. It keeps things from eating my fruits. Now, they're going to probably eat a little bit of my fruit anyways, but if there's lots of things for them to eat, especially things that are their favorite things to eat, then they'll eat less of my stuff that I don't want them to eat. And so that's a huge part when you're making the balance between aesthetic, the beauty of your garden, that picture-worthy moment, and the actual functionality of making it a lazy garden, an easy garden, an abundant garden. And that's the reason I do that. Another reason that I do a lot of this where I leave things in space, and I've talked to you guys a lot about that, and let's come around here to the other side. You know, keeping these things all clumped together and letting things continue to keep growing. One of those reasons, as you saw from the very beginning of this live this morning, was that there was a honeybee flitting around, okay? So as I'm going through, and yesterday I went through and harvested, because I was doing a lot of cleanup, I harvested a ton of basil. And the basil that I harvested, I then took in, go away, fly. The basil that I harvested, I took it inside and made some pizza salt with it. But as I was going through the garden, I was noticing that the honeybees, and yes, the honeybees talk to me. I don't know if they talk to you, but they talk to me. And the honeybees were saying, please leave us some flowers because we're looking for flowers right now. And the honeybees absolutely love the flowers on the basil. So be sure to leave those for them as well. Cut back what you need to cut back. Maybe cut back some of the stuff that's actually dried out, like these seeds here, but leave the flowers for the honeybees and the pollinators. The other reason is because I'm trying to create warmth. I'm trying to create barriers to keep things out, barriers to keep warmth in, that kind of thing. Structure. I've left a lot of this here because I've got a tomato vine that's growing up in this stuff, and I want to just kind of let it be and not mess around with it too much. And so if I can just kind of get it out of my way, and you know, you can sculpt it a little bit. If you're concerned about the way that the plant looks or whatever, the shape of things, go in and trim them into a more pleasing way of looking at them for you. But remember that the goal, yes, the beauty is a top priority. But in addition to that, you want to have a successful garden, especially as we move through the winter and into the spring. You want to have lots of abundance of the food that comes out of your garden. And you also want to have shade, and you want to have honeybees, and you want to have all the beautiful things to enjoy as well. And all of these things are a part of that and help those out as well. So one of the things I mentioned earlier was warmth. And I can actually show you in this garden how that plumeria plant is actually staying in really good shape. It's happy, the leaves are still doing good, it's actually still putting on new growth, as opposed to a different plumeria that I have in a different part of the yard that actually looks really sad. And it's because it doesn't have the same sort of warmth and wind block that that particular plant has. So let's just look around here for a bit so I can show you around what I'm doing. Now, I haven't cleaned in this garden like I did in the other garden yesterday, so there's still a lot of like dead growth and things like that I'm going to go back. And I'm telling you guys, I have been like, in this particular garden, I have been like a sculptor, like an artist. I'm literally getting myself a nice palette. I'm sitting down on the ground and I'm working in that space. I'm trimming back. I'm going in and cutting back on my pepper plants. If I go in and see a pepper plant that has a limb sticking out, the limb doesn't look super healthy. It also doesn't have any buds on it. It doesn't have any flowers. It doesn't have any new fruit growth on it. Then I'm going to trim that back just to kind of help get some of the stuff out of the way as we move into the time of year when things will begin to start putting their happy space on, their happy growth on. So that's the springtime. But in the meantime, we're managing the warmth. So be real careful. Don't trim things back so much that then the wind comes and the cool air comes and it's too cold for that plant. So there's a happy balance between trimming for beauty, getting things out of the way so that the places that are actually producing, you see this mama plant, she's got a lot of babies. And we need to make sure she's getting all the different nutrients. That being said, fertilize, minerals. Now's the time to put your Epsom salt on. Now's the time to put your fertilizer on. All of those types of things to give those mama plants everything they need to grow all the good babies, right? You want that. Okay, so I've got growing over here some winter squash that's still doing good. I expect my winter squash, as long as I don't deal with any kinds of pests or pathogens. In this garden, it's warmer. As long as we don't get a super hard freeze, I expect that I'll have some winter squash eventually from that. I've got another squash going in over there. Different types of cucumbers. I'm very hopeful that that stuff will just continue to grow. I'm continuing to let my okra grow out and seed out. You can see that one over there, seeds popping, right? 2 reasons. One, be careful where you step because there's stuff planted all the way to the edge down there. I protect my garden everywhere I go, every step that you take. Then I'm leaving these things up, not just because of the seeds that are popping that I want to let dry on the vine or on the plant. They're actually going to be better seeds if you do it that way. But in addition to that, it also gives me some growth opportunity for different things that I could be planting right now that are needing a trellis. Of course, my cucumbers are needing trellises, but also I'm starting to put in peas. All different types of sugar snap peas, snow peas, all of those types of things, and they do need some trellising. I'm also still going in, and as my black-eyed peas are seeding, I'm just going ahead and popping those seeds back in, which means that I could potentially have, let's see, look right here, some fresh black-eyed peas for Thanksgiving to serve with our Thanksgiving dinner. And so that's a good thing to just keep going. If you've got the space and you've got the time to do it, just go ahead and pop those seeds back in there. My eggplants are really, really strong and taking off. In the other garden, my eggplants are really, really producing well. All of my flowers are starting to put on. You can see that the zinnias are just as happy as can be. My different peppers are putting more and more peppers on it. I had my first tomato come off of this particular vine over here today. I do need to take it in and use my little fancy, if those of you that listened last year, you learned that I have a brown bag trick. So if you've got tomatoes that need to come off because of a potential freeze, you have a tomato that falls off, you have a section of tomatoes where you know the birds are going to get at it before you do, then the best thing to do is wait for that to be just enough, have just enough of the little bit of yellow or red on it, and then pop it into a brown bag with another tomato that is actually already starting to turn as well, and then that tomato will actually turn. So, hello Monarch baby, how are you today? Now don't forget, when it comes to your milkweed, that you're wanting to try to make sure that you get your milkweed cut back at the end of November. I cut all my milkweed back because I was dealing with some aphids. I cut it way back, and now it's just all growing back very happy and healthy. You can see right here where I cut on this one right here, and now it's just all happy and healthy. And so that's good for right now. It's good for the pretty flowers. It's good for the pollinators. But at the end of November, we want to make sure we cut those back all the way to the ground so that they don't come back again until, they won't really strongly come back again until February, when the monarchs start coming back around again. And the reason of that, I've mentioned before, is because we want to make sure that we kill back that parasite that could potentially be living in that plant that doesn't die back on its own naturally. That's a tropical milkweed, and that's the reason that it does that. So over here I started planting in, what you should do is feed the chickens so that they all argue with each other. So over here I'm starting to put in a lot of different types of radishes and beets. I put down a ton of dill seed today. I also, on my trellising areas, and I will go back in as I come over to this garden to really get it cleaned up, to clean back all of that just dead growth right now, because there's no purpose for that, especially as I'm starting to grow something new to trellis up it. And so the new that I'm going to plant there to trellis up it, or have been planting, is the sugar snap peas and the snow peas that love to have some trellising as well. Look how beautiful my zinnia flowers are. I mean, my goodness. And I'm just planting more and more zinnias as I go. Now, in terms of my transplants, I'm really looking at this point for the most warmth, most daylight hours that I can get to. So as I'm seeding, and you can see that I've got new little baby seeding, new little baby things starting to seed here. I got ordering pots online from Amazon is always fun. I never seem to get the right ones, but I've got all these little babies. But in the meantime, I'm also growing lots of other things as well. Most of what I'm transplanting still to this day, or like what I'm seeding to transplant, is a lot of the different like finicky herbs, chamomile, oregano, sage, parsley, all of that different stuff. I mean, parsley, cilantro, dill, you can direct plant those in pretty easily. But a lot of those ones that are a little bit more finicky, your lavender, just keep playing with those and keep planting those till they get the perfect germination temperature, because that's the thing with those. A lot of those herbs are tricky. The thyme, all that stuff, it's just tricky to get the correct germination temperature. So just keep planting a few of them in a little pot and just keep going forward. You'll get one eventually. And then Of course, you get one after you've planted 800 seeds, you might start picking another seed company to work with, or find a different seed that's more adaptable to your particular area. But that's something to keep in mind. I'm also doing, of course, all of my brassicas, not Brussels sprouts. I'm actually not planting any more seeds of Brussels sprouts. It's too late for that now, but I am still direct planting Brussels sprouts into the ground. So if I've got a plant, or if you buy a plant from the nursery, you can continue to keep planting those in as well. Of course, I'm also still seeding broccoli, cabbage, cauliflower, kohlrabi, any of those other types of brassicas. I'm also heavily planting the roots at this point. I've already pretty much planted all of my carrots and all of my turnips, but I'm still planting some radishes, and I'm still planting some beets, and I may decide to get some more of those turnips at some point as I begin to harvest that stuff. I'm doing a lot of that stuff out at the farm, and I think in the very near future we're going to host this live at the farm so that you can see what's going on with that garden out there, because it is truly an opportunity for us to engage in a larger scale, what I would call market garden. It's still the very polyculture biodiverse way that I grow here, but it's definitely looks more of what a traditional garden, a market garden looks like. So some of the things I've talked about over here is truly leaving and cleaning this up. But look, this tomatillo is still doing really well. It's still happy. It's still putting tomatillos on. And so I'm going to continue to let that plant be well and where it's at for as long as it can possibly. The other thing I did is I went back into a lot of the areas and really cut back all of this green harmony. But this green harmony is still looking really healthy. The green harmony, I've learned it actually will get a different type of pathogen that'll actually knock it back. And so if you start to see that, just go ahead and start to take that plant out and put something in different there for a little while. But in addition to that, green harmony doesn't like the cold weather. And so it's a good time of year to, once it starts getting too cold for it, to just really trim it back and grow other things in its space. You may lose it, but that's okay because it's so easy to, and I'll show you here in a minute when we go over there. It's so easy to transplant those and start them over again that don't ever worry about losing a green harmony plant. So back over here, that's what you'll see is that I really cleaned this green harmony plant back. It was massive and way overgrown, and I cut it all the way back, potentially because it could be causing some of the concern that I'm seeing in my peppers over here, some of the pathogen concerns that I'm seeing in my peppers over here. So I'm gonna watch it and see what happens as because you can see that on the plant, it's actually got that kind of like the same kind of spotting. So it may be that those two plants don't need to grow next to each other anymore. This is one of those hands in the dirt learning things. And when you're talking about something like green harmony, it's not a plant that's like grown everywhere. It's a new plant. The longevity spinach, it's new. And so we're learning about it and learning what to partner it with and what not to partner with and stuff like that. I had one of those growing in this bed and I took it out in the past as well. And so those are things to just keep in mind. That's the reason why this space is so nice and big and abundant and available to have some different things growing in it. I've got a really successful growing, let's see, what is this? It's a cauliflower. This is a snow white crown, so it's going to be a regular white cauliflower. And over here, I've planted a Hestia Brussels sprout. This is the main Brussels sprout that I grew from seed this year. It's doing really well. I trimmed back my oregano and got it all nice, partially because I wanted to use the herb yesterday with the basil to make my pizza salt that I mentioned before. And I've put all different types of seeds in here in this whole mixture over here. Different types of flowers. I've begun direct planting my poppy. I love poppy flowers. They only grow in the winter time. I've also begun transplanting pansies. You can see that pansies are here. Pansies are also edible, so that's a beautiful thing to take a few snips off of when you're making some, holiday salads or whatever you're going to be doing for the holidays. That's a great way to have some pretty flowers for that as well. My Cuban oregano is going to start to trim itself back as the winter comes. So one of the things I've begun doing is cutting big sections of it off, of course using the herb, but also transplanting it so I have plenty of Cuban oregano to replant in case this one loses itself this year. This plant has been in here for about 3 years, and generally what happens is it just gets super small and then it regrows really big and beautiful in the winter time. So here's one of my little pepper plants is really starting to put on lots and lots of peppers. This is that the Peter pepper, so I'll be waiting for those to actually turn red. Those are a hot pepper. And then over here, lots of little peppers starting to go on as well. This is, I believe, some type of New Mex or like an ancho type of, no, sorry, Anaheim type of pepper. My eggplant's doing really well. I harvested a ton of eggplant yesterday. I'm going ahead and taking them off a little bit smaller because there were so many of them. And so this mama plant, she had a lot of babies and she needed to offload a few of them, and I helped her out with that. But it made a nice little load of the eggplants for my mom to use for something she's going to make with the eggplant. It also gave me the ability to then look at this plant again and decide what parts of it can be trimmed off, because I'm really kind of done with this long limb that's like hanging out over here, and I want to craft this up, and I want to kind of like what you would call when you're trimming or pruning your trees, kind of the same thing. I want to prune this eggplant. I want to get it in shape again, because we're past the point of the year where I can just let things completely overgrow. I want them to be like a little bit more contained and warm. But she's still growing lots of babies out here, so I'm leaving it alone until I can get that to stop happening. Once I get that to stop happening, then I will cut this limb all the way back as well. You can see here I've got some peppers. I'm trying to get happy again. They seem to be putting on peppers, and they're good here. I've got a Suriname cherry that's actually been growing there for quite a while. I'm hopeful this year that it'll actually take off a little bit more. I put in another, this is a cheddar cauliflower. This is the one that I'll have that golden head. That one I didn't plant from seed. I purchased that one. Lots more eggplants, different types of peppers. I've put in some other brassicas and things like that over there. Of course, my Turk's cap is happy as can be. I saw the hummingbirds over here on it this morning. Your moringa, it's going to start to not like the the cool weather. So make sure that you start to get it trimmed back and get what you want off of it. If you want to restart any young plants and some transplants, just be prepared to manage their warmth. So if you get them started, and I have a couple as I've been trimming them back because I want to make sure I have plenty of happy moringa trees in the springtime to plant. And so that's one thing to do, but you need to protect them from when they're in a small pot. You need to protect them from cold weather. And so when we have those really, really, really drop nights, make sure you put them up on a patio or somewhere where they'll stay really nice and warm. So you can see how happy my little bees are over here. These were the bees. Look how many bees are over here. The bees finally found us. Go pollinate my squash, please. Go pollinate my squash and my what's that other thing that I'm growing over there that I keep talking about? Now I can't even remember. It doesn't matter. Anyway, so you can see that this is what I'm talking about with the longevity spinach. It's super easy to regrow. These are literally cuttings I've taken off my plant, and they've regrown. And so you can do that just as easily with yours. So start preparing and getting yours ready for the spring and the summer so you'll have more of them. And then you can see here, I'm just, again, looking for that sun, as much sun as I can possibly get. And you can see that I've got all of these, so I'm up potting. These all need to be watered this morning, but I haven't done that yet because I wanted to do the live before. But I'm up potting all of this stuff large enough. Most of this stuff will actually go out to the farm. So when I give you guys the farm tour, you'll see what's happening with most of these types of things. Some of the tomato plants at this point, I may just up pot them into even bigger pots and hang on to them until late February, mid-February, to plant them in the ground at this point. Hopefully I can just keep them alive, everything happy. Hopefully we won't have any types of massive freezes this year that'll cause any major problems. Hopefully we're gonna have like 6 months of spring weather, you know, up in the 82 every once in a while and down in the 62 every once in a while, and maybe a drop a little bit more, but no, not too deep. I'm looking for a perfect winter. I hope you are too. Happy November. I hope that you guys are having the best life ever. I hope that you have the best November ever. If you're interested in getting involved with me as a garden coach or garden consultant, please reach out to me. I have an interesting Google form doc that gives you some opportunities to choose some different things that I'm doing to see if there's something that you're interested in. I've got different types of public speaking events, different types of educational workshops that I can do. In addition to that, I'm putting together I mentioned this before, but I am putting together a foodscaping masterclass, 6-week masterclass. So that's going to be coming out. It might actually come out at the first of the year, depending on what I'm thinking about how people are managing their time and their finances here as we roll into the holiday season. So it may be a January 1 type of situation that I go with there. And all the rest of that, don't forget that episode 9, I'm like, I don't even know where we are at this point. Episode 9 of Dinner Table Talks comes out. We have made episode 9 of season 2. We have made it all the way around, and one of the funny things about when you cook seasonally and your podcast is about seasonal cooking and you start to run into the same vegetables you were cooking last year. So now I can say, oh, you can go back to episode 9 or 10. Hey, the fire started again. I was wondering if it would if we could get it to start back up again. I guess what I know exactly what I'm going to go do with my time. I think I'm going to go poke around in the fire. I'll see you all very soon. Please let me know if you're interested in getting involved with me. I also have a group called It's Just Aislynn. If you're interested in that, just send me a DM and I'll drop you in there. And I try to do a few more lives and things like that for that group as well. It's open to anyone that's willing to go get in the garden with Aislynn. Alrighty, love you guys. See you soon. Have a great day.